Call to order. We need a roll call. Does Crystal, you want to call the roll?
Yes, I can do that. Bertram,
Present.
Chesak,
Yes.
Cope, Lambert, Nebel, Stenberg.
Here.
Okay, we have a quorum. Okay. Oh, what happened here? We have, what's the description? Am I missing something here? Roll call and then description? Oh, election of chair and vice chair, I'm sorry. So I guess we'd open it up for nominations for chair. If you nominate, it's not done through a motion, you just say, I nominate whomever you want to be chair, and then we take all the nominations, close it, and then we just, I think what we'd do is do like Kelly did for the council, we'll just raise our hand who we're voting for if there's more than one.
Mr. Chair, I would nominate Nathan for chairman.
Okay, we have a nomination for Nathan Bertram for chair. Is there any other nominations for chair other than Nathan?
I'm not mad at you about anything.
So we have one nomination for chair. Is there any other nominations? I'll do this 3 times. Is there any other nominations? Seeing none, I guess we'd look for a motion then
I
to,
move that nomination cease and a unanimous ballot be cast for Nathan Bertram.
I'll second that.
motion by Mrs. Cope and a second by Mr. Doug Stenberg, right?
That's fine.
Okay,
Yep.
that's correct.
Yes,
Always
that's
get your
correct.
name. I apologize.
No,
Anyway,
that's
So
fine.
we have a motion, a second, any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Okay, was there votes over there?
Yeah, aye,
Okay,
aye.
okay. So you are the chair, now you can ask for vice chairman.
Thank you. Do we have any nominations for vice chair?
I would nominate Jan Lambert, even though she's not here, which I don't think is necessary. Yes. Yeah.
With all due respect, Ms. Lambert was chairman not too long ago. And I would like to see it moved around. I think it's.
Okay, well, I nominated Jan, so,
I heard
Yep.
you. Mr. Chair, I'm going to nominate Mr. Stenberg.
okay? That's up to you then.
Well, Jan is present, so we'll wait for her to be seated.
We elected a chairman. It's Mr. Nathan
No, it's me
Bertram.
for this year. Oh, I just hit my.
Congratulations, sir.
Now we have nominations for vice chair.
Now we're
which
doing
is-
nominations for vice chair, and you were nominated along with Doug. And so if there's any other nominations.
They're wheeling and dealing over there. I look for a motion.
Any further nominations? If not, look for a motion.
No, I think what we have to do is ask for the vote for who wants to.
A vote?
Yeah, so being that Lambert was first, you just take the vote on
Right.
one at a time.
So we'll do vote by roll call. And how do we do that? We'll just do one at a time,
Everybody does have to state their.
their vote.
If you want to just do like Bevins did for the council, just raise your hand who you're in favor of.
Okay.
It's, but,
But if we say it, Mr. Chair.
Yeah, I think we can just go around. You can say who you'd like to
Okay,
vote
that's
for. I
fine.
think that'll be just as quick. Mary?
I'm voting for Mr. Stenberg.
Okay. Jan? Doug?
I'll say Jan.
okay,
Jeff?
I'll say Jan.
Can't say myself.
It's up to you.
I'll say Doug.
Oh, now we're tied. Right.
Yeah, I think no?
No, I should be the tiebreaker.
You should type, you're
Okay.
the vice chair.
Okay.
Yeah, there's 3-2.
Congratulations, sir.
It's 3-2 for Doug.
And you get the big salary that goes with it.
That's right.
Wonderful.
All right. Thank you, everyone. What do we need to do on the document description of advisory committee responsibilities? Do we need to do any formal review?
Congratulations, new Mr. Chair Bertram. That document is for informational purposes only due to the election piece.
Perfect. If we don't need to do anything formal with that, then I would move for approval of the agenda.
I'll move to approve the agenda, Mr. Chairman.
I'll second.
I have a first and a second. Any further discussion? If not, all in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? All right, approval agenda. Approval of the minutes from 11/10/2022.
I'll move to approve the agenda, or the
Second,
minutes, I mean.
second Lambert.
Any further discussion? If not, all in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? All right, approval minutes. That puts us on number 6, financial reports. We'll look to Crystal or Connie.
Good afternoon, Mr. New Chair. I can pick that up if you can hear me okay, right?
I can.
All right, this is Jesse Dean, the Public Works Director. Thank you all for allowing me to join virtually while I'm down in Bloomington, so I appreciate that very much. So I included, so in the packet, you'll see the financial report, as well as a report that has the reserves funds, as well as my memo. I wanted to make sure you guys all had all of those things, so you had a chance to review those ahead of the meeting. Now, unfortunately, the reserves account is a pretty lengthy spreadsheet. The important thing is probably the very last number. That's the one you want to focus on. So as of the last balance that we had, it was just over 200,000. That was the reserves account amount, and the financial report is generally final for 2022, maybe a tweak here and there as we reconcile some things, but it is generally pretty close to what we experienced for 2022. So with that, I'd like to go into the memo and kind of talk about the analysis. Again, I included at least I hope was a pretty good summary for everybody to understand what had occurred in 2022 and some of our plans moving forward into 2023. As far as analyzing the system and the different routes and services that we do have. So I'll just go through a summary here of 2022.
Just before Jesse starts, Jesse, excuse me,
Yes, Jen.
Lambert.
Absolutely.
Would you just mind, because I don't have a county read, can you,
Is your mic on?
Oh,
it's not even by me here? There, okay. Would you be able to help me with the headings up here on our account description? I know the amended is what our action,
Jesse, can I take over that for you? This is Connie.
Absolutely, go ahead.
So the first column on the report, the far left, reads the 2022 budget. It says amended budget, but we didn't have an amended budget. The next column is just the activity for December 31st, 2022. If it's a negative number, that means that it's a abnormal number. So you can see like state grants, for example, it's a negative 237,000. That is because we had it misclassified. And so I just did a journal entry in December to move that. That's why that looks weird for December. So what I would concentrate on is the next column says the year-to-date balance as of 2022. So I would compare that column to the budget column, and that's the available balance. So when you look on page 2 of that, we were budgeting around a $48,000 deficit, meaning expenditures were going to exceed revenues. What actually happened for 2022 is that the expenditures exceed revenues by $139,492. Does that help to answer your question, Jan?
just let me, so yeah, expenditures. Okay, I got it, yep, thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Connie. So I'll run through a summary, and if there's some more detailed questions here, we'll run through some of the details as required. So just kind of going through the revenues between what we expected or budgeted and actual. So if you look at like fare box revenues, invoicing revenues, we were actually really close. We budgeted just under 137, and we were just over $136,000. So we were only short about $600 throughout the year. Other revenues, we were short about 4,700, plus or minus a few bucks. Most of that was a reduction in advertising revenue. Our advertising, I'll call it firm, I guess, did not receive the same revenues from the bus wraps as we would have expected, so we were quite a bit short there. State and federal grant was received as expected. So overall, our total revenues was actually pretty close when you consider what we were budgeting for the entire year. You're talking about a little under $1.5 million. We were short about 5,300. Digging into kind of the expenditures, again, instead of doing it line by line, I kind of clump these things together, make it a little bit more digestible. So when you look at personnel, so this is our staff, so specifically city staff like Crystal, Andy before he retired. We were short about 6,900 versus what we had budgeted. Again, Andy's retirement, that saved us a little bit of money on wages. However, we ate a little bit into that with his severance package, but we did by the end of the year have some savings in our personnel cost. Supplies, just general supplies, we were over about $300. And I kind of bolded a few things. So fuels, we were considerably higher than what was budgeted amount. We were budgeting just over 68,000. We ended up spending nearly 120,000 in fuel. Miscellaneous services, so not necessarily services, but like postage, phone, professional services, insurance, all that stuff lumped together. We were about just under $7,700 short of the budget, which actually is a good thing. So we ran under budget by 7,700, give or take. Repairs, so this again, very specific to the buses on the cost of repairs. So we budgeted about $76,000. We ended up spending just over $101,000 on repairs. So that was an increase of just over $25,000. And then finally, the third party contract. So this is direct billable items from Blue Sky contract. We originally budgeted $1,056,000. And we spent about $1,081,000 or almost $82,000. So that was about $25,000 over budget. So I mentioned the ones that I kind of bolded were the big hitter items, and I really want to focus on those three things. And we talked a little bit in November about the issues that we had with inflation and the issues on commodities. That's really specifically related to transit. Jan, yeah, how can I help you?
Hold on one second, Dan. Lambert?
Yes, professional services, could you just give me an idea what that is?
So that would be anything that we hire out. So IT, if it's not done internally, that would be considered a professional service.
Okay, so we didn't utilize anything this year then? Right?
Correct.
Okay,
I couldn't tell you why the 3,000 was in there if there was something intended, but we did not utilize that
okay,
3,000.
thanks, Jesse.
Yep. So kind of re-hitting on some of those really big inflationary items, and of course, like transit is very reliable, or at least very heavily relied upon. Some of the commodities that saw the worst of the inflation throughout this year. So fuels, motor fuels, oil, repairs. Those are some of the commodities that saw the highest increases in 2022. And obviously those are very sensitive for the transit program, considering the operations that we do. So I did do a little bit of summary on some numbers that Crystal was nice enough to help me out kind of put together. So I put some average dollar amounts from what we'd seen in gasoline, unleaded gasoline versus diesel, comparing 2021 to 2022. And as you can imagine, like we all experienced, even in our own vehicles, there was a considerably higher cost in 2022 than we were paying for gas in 2021. And I even mentioned in there the new administrative 10% fee that Crow Wing County is starting to charge us now for. Didn't apply throughout the entire year, but did apply through kind of that fourth quarter of 2022 on just our unleaded fuel. So again, gas was a pretty big inflationary item that hit us really hard. Repairs and maintenance, again, same thing. Industry-wide parts went through the roof. Labor costs went up as well. So it became a very big challenge for us to maintain the similar budget that we set out oh, it would have been back in June of 2021 or, summer of 2021, predicting what was going to happen in 2022. And like most agencies, most government agencies, and I guess anybody else that does a budget for 2022 did not see this coming. And it really took everybody kind of for surprise. So that's really what we had seen for those two major items. Just to summarize the third-party contractor increase. So I believe I mentioned at the November meeting that the third-party contractor dollar amount is not the full amount that was bid in the original contract. And the reason for this is we are still running a service short. Because of that, we do realize some savings from the original contract amount. The challenge with that is we don't know exactly how much that's going to affect the budget. When you take a route away, how many hours is that going to affect? And then the same on the other end of that is there are days throughout the year, really easy that we all seen during this season of winter, during a really heavy snow event, if we have to cancel a service, those reduction in hours usually ends up as savings for us. So it's a very difficult number to know down exactly, but we do have a baseline, and they did pretty good. If you compare, while it is a large amount, $25,000 is nothing to sneeze at by any means, but when you're talking about $1 million, they were only off by just over 2%. So 2.4% was how close they were in the budget number for an estimate that's actually not too far off. So to kind of summarize the entire budget, so the total revenues was just over 1.5 million. Our total expenditures was 1.65 million and change. So when you net that, we were short just under $140,000 revenue versus expenditures. Originally, we were already budgeting a $48,000 shortfall. So really through operations this year and the inflationary things we just talked about, that ended up resulting in a net loss of an additional roughly $90,000. So when we talk about the 140, really what we want to nail down is where did the other 90 come from? And like I mentioned, a lot of that is going to be in your inflationary items. Fuels was 50,000 of that. Repairs was another 25. So of that 90, fuels and repairs, lubricants, that kind of stuff, that was 75,000 of the 90. And then obviously, like I mentioned, the third-party contract, we were off by a little bit on the estimate there, and that kind of made up for the other difference. Ultimately, we did find some savings elsewhere, like Jan mentioned, on like professional services. The personnel, we had some savings. And so we did realize some savings here and there, but obviously that far did not outweigh the huge increases we had seen in fuels and repairs. Going into ridership, really great increase in ridership throughout the entire system, a little over 22% higher, 2022 versus 2021. Lot of really great increases. The only service that did not see an increase was the county dial-a-ride. Actually saw a net decrease of just under 80 trips. So about a 10% drop. Every other service actually saw a pretty sizable increase. And then the county rides itself was actually the highest amount or highest percentage increase of almost 43% increase. You can make the argument that maybe some of those dial-a-rides went to that service, but county saw a pretty good size. Brainerd Baxter saw a good increase. But overall, our entire system did see a really healthy increase of ridership.
Jesse, hold on 1 second. We have a question by Jeff.
Thanks,
Absolutely.
Thanks, Jesse. I'm not sure. Okay, when we look at ridership and the revenues, I apologize for not having this in front of me. Does this show what we budgeted for in dollars for ridership and then what we earned? Do you have that number?
I can't tell you how many riders we would have budgeted for, but I can tell you that we budgeted for 136, which between the fare box revenues, invoice revenues, all those things rolled together. which was a budgeted increase over 2021. So when we budgeted 2022, we were budgeting for an increase in ridership. So
What's that number
our
is what I'm
increase-
asking. Do you have that number there?
difference between this year and last year.
What did we budget for 2022 and what were our actuals for ridership dollars?
When I summed them all up, the budgeted number was 136,692. So that is bus revenue and invoice billing and counter sales. So those are all
And what-
specifically to
And-
the ridership, not advertising and all that other stuff.
Okay, so you gave me the number we budgeted for. What did we actually take in?
136,084. So we were short $600 from the budget.
Thank you.
Yep, or 608. So while we did increase our ridership by just a little over 22%, we didn't realize enough of that increase to balance out what was originally budgeted for that revenue, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. I just wanted to have you identify those numbers for me. Thank you.
Absolutely. So just to summarize, kind of so I'll talk about ridership. So just summarizing 2022, again, a lot of inflationary measures cost us a really large amount of money. It didn't help that we were already budgeted on the shortfall. Inflation really didn't help us any. We had a lot of different things like the extra 10% administration fee by the county that didn't really help anything and just kind of exacerbated the issue as gas prices started going down in the fall. The extra 10% that they were charging us put it right back up. So we didn't really get to see some of these savings towards the end of the year either. So it was a really tough year in 2022. So like we mentioned in the November meeting, we have a much better feel for where the issues were, at least summarizing the inflation stuff like fuels, maintenance, and knowing that a lot of those costs are not going to go down. Gas is going down a little bit, but it's not going down at the level that we're gonna see 2021 dollars anytime soon, if ever. So what we really need to do is analyze the entire system and really take a look at which routes we are able to continue to fund at the current level that they're at. So I included here kind of the method that staff is intending to follow here. So really what we want to do is look at previous ridership for really every single route. Go back, look at previous and then project out for the next 5 years of what we expect those routes to get for the next 5 years. Project those out and then analyze the expenses that those rides are going to cost us. So we have an idea of how much gas and how much miles per gallon it takes us to get to Pine River, for instance. So we know to go to Pine River every day, it's going to cost us X amount of dollars. When we have 2 riders riding inside the city limits at $1 a piece, we're getting $2 back in revenue. So figuring out all those different pieces, how much those rides are costing us. So then we also do expenditure percentages based on the existing cooperative agreement. So this is the stuff that we can't figure out in that way. So personnel, like Crystal's salary, our third-party contract, it's really hard for us to decipher how much of Crystal's contract goes to the Pine River route. So we have to use the percentages that we currently have in our cooperative agreements with our cooperative partners. So Baxter, Crow Wing, Pine River, how much of that expenditures that those people are responsible for, and take that money and kind of apply it to those trips as well. Once we're able to do that, then we can figure out, all right, because we now know what it's going to cost us to run each and every one of those routes between fuel, maintenance, staff, the third-party contract, all these little services, all of that, roll that into one large cost per ride, per passenger, per route. So Pine River, how much does it cost us everything rolled together per passenger, per time. And then we can figure out, okay, if it's going to cost us $10 to make this trip, MnDOT's going to pitch in 85% of that. So we need to be able to fund the other 15%. So if it's costing us $10 to make that route, we at least have to bring in $1.50 in revenue. If that makes sense, how I'm kind of coming up with those numbers. So our intention for this spring is to really dig into and do that almost route by route based throughout the entire system and figure out how much each one costs us and how much we have to charge to make up the difference, minus the MnDOT share. Once we figure out, all right, let's say, I'm gonna throw out a number and it's gonna be wild, but, let's say we figure out that Pine River, we need to charge $3 per trip to be able to pay for that bus to go up to Pine River every day. So our intention is to talk with Pine River and say, understanding that your dollar amount was, $1 per trip for however many every years. Based on our analysis, we're gonna have to charge $3 per trip to be able to pay for the service, to pay for the fuel, pay for the staff. Is that a direction that Pine River wants to go? Are they acceptable to that? And if not, is that a route that we need to eliminate? Is that a route that we have to do something else with? But we can't do that until we do this first analysis. So once we do that, then we can start having those conversations. Once we've had those conversations, then we do want to come back to TAC and say what the findings were and the results of those conversations with our partners. So whether that's the county says you know what, we want to reduce the Crosby bus to 1 day a week, or if let's increase our county routes to $6 per ride. We want the county to be able to say what they recommend, and then we want to present that to the TAC of what our analysis showed.
Jesse,
What-
Jeff,
Yep, go ahead.
Jeff has a question quick.
Absolutely.
Sorry to interrupt you. When you're using Pine River as a example, is that a fair example? Because we charge Pine River right now for the cost it takes us to operate, do we not? And then what their fares don't pay for, they are levying their taxpayers in the city of Pine River, isn't that correct?
I don't believe they levy for anything. It's very similar to Crow Wing. They don't really necessarily levy for the program. In the past, it has happened where I believe Andy has billed Crow Wing. I think that's the only one that he's actually billed any amount for a funding shortfall, I believe was Crow Wing County. I don't know if Pine River's been billed in the past, and I don't think Baxter has either for any potential shortfalls.
Jan is thinking that Pine River has been billed. I'm pretty sure Crow Wing County has in the past as well.
And Baxter too. All three of those entities have been billed. And that's one of the agreements, and maybe Connie can help us. One of the agreements with Pine River was the fact that they would cover any of our shortfalls.
Yeah, that's why I wanted to make sure we're using a fair example. When you're saying Pine River as an example, I appreciate why you were doing that, but I don't think it's apples to apples, because my understanding is whatever Pine River fares don't cover in the cost to provide a bus to them, they pay. The city
Yeah.
pays. So I just want to make sure we're on the same page with that, because that would be completely new to me if we're not doing that. So.
Correct. So you're 100% correct. And that's the same with all of our partners, is that they are responsible that whatever their program does not fund, they need to supply the remaining funds for. But we want them to make that decision. If they want to keep fares where they are, and we say, you know what, we're projecting by the end of the year, you're going to run $20,000 short every year. You better be prepared to budget $20,000 in your levy or wherever it is to fund that shortfall, or you need to either eliminate the route, or you need to increase fares, or a combination of everything. We want to put.
Jesse, we got another
we want to do that
question from
analysis.
Jan here too.
Yes,
Yep.
I think with Pine River, when you're talking about that, you're talking from going to Brainerd to Pine River. Pine River takes care of itself from within the city limits. So the cost you're talking about is what we should charge picking them up in Brainerd or Baxter, right, or somewhere in the county. That's the fare that you said we have to adjust, and wouldn't that be something we would probably adjust on our end, where the city would, of Pine River, would then, they agree to have do the shortfall, but wouldn't it be wouldn't it be for us to determine whether if it goes to Pine River, that cost is the responsibility of the city of Brainerd to determine?
So the buses are housed here in Brainerd, but we do have to get them to Pine River. And then from there, once it's in Pine River, you're right, you just go through town. But there is a cost for us to get them to there. And
That's what I'm saying. I'm saying the cost is our cost. Pine River is doing the cost of their service. So to me, the cost that you're talking about is the cost that we have as the transit to go from here to there. So that should be something I would think that we would be looking at, because that would be directly the result of the staff we have down here.
So I will have to verify that through that agreement. So that'll be a challenge because we all kind of share in the expenditures of the system. So the cost for us to put a bus to Pine River, is that strictly a Brainerd cost, or is that a cooperative cost? And everybody's picking up a share of that Pine River bus going up there. So that is something that we'll have to verify through that agreement of who is responsible for getting the bus from Brainerd to Pine River, and that expenditure of fuel and maintenance for that bus to make that trip every day. So we'll verify that through those agreements, but we'll get a really good number of what they are responsible for before we have those conversations with them.
Jess, you had a question from Jeff as well?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I know, Jesse, I know this is your first go at this whole transit thing here in Brainerd and Crow Wing County, so I just want to make sure that my understanding has always been that the cost of providing that bus to Pine River, the cost of providing the bus was the cost to Pine River. It wasn't just when they got to Pine River, it was the cost to get it there and to bring it back. That's one of the reasons I can't get on the bus in Brainerd and ride up there.
Correct.
Because it's not not the service agreement. It's not the way it works with the whole thing through the state and everything like that. So, and I understand that, but I want to make sure that Pine River, the whole reason they came on to get joined up with the Crow Wing County Brainerd Transit was because they were going to cover the cost of that bus. So I hope you get the details of that. Maybe, I'm just presuming maybe you just don't have that information, so you're not, and I don't want to say, you're wrong, because I don't know for a fact, because when you're talking about analyzing and seeing what the costs are to cover that bus specifically going to Pine River, we should know that already. That's why that's why I brought this up in the first place. When you're using that as an example, we should know that already and build them accordingly. So I think that's what, Jan, you understood that perhaps the same way.
Yes, and that's my understanding, that we really had a unique contract with Pine River in the fact that the cost to us was very, very limited.
Yep. So
Go ahead. I just want to clarify, I'm using Pine River as a quick example. I don't have all those details right in front of me.
Yep.
But when we do this analysis, we will dig into all of our expenditures. So every bit of fuel has to be attributed to somebody.
I
And
just
once
had
we
one
figure out
quick,
where all those funds go to, we need to do that analysis of how much it's really costing us. Because if $1 is really the right fare, or $4 for a county bus, is that the right fare? And do we need to make an adjustment, or does the county need to start levying money to cover the difference? I am very skeptical that many of the partners are going to be willing to levy. From initial conversations, it sounds like that most likely will not be the case. They would rather see fare increases or service eliminations before that occurs, but it also depends on the number too. So this is why we don't have those numbers in front of us right now. We need to go through this process first so we can speak intelligently to those partners. We can't do that today.
Jesse, that was kind of my question, was just, is it gonna be you and Crystal, or you and your team kind of doing the analysis on this, or who is doing that part of it?
So Crystal and I will spend the spring working on that. Once we've finished it, then we're gonna start having those conversations with them.
Excuse me, just,
ahead, Jen.
Mr. Chair, would like to see a TAC member on that analysis also. The reason being, I think well, a lot of us have been here from the get-go, and we have some history, but I do think it would behoove us to have somebody on the TAC on that. And maybe just for listening, I mean, we don't have to have anything, but I think it would be important to have somebody on from the TAC there. That's just my opinion, and I do hope that we have an agreement on that.
I think I would,
Chair, maybe I'm misunderstanding what Jan is trying to say, but I understood that all we want is some accurate information relative to the cost of bringing the bus from Brainerd to Pine River and back. And if that is built into the cost we're charging Pine River, we don't really need a TAC member to do that. That's mainly a paperwork problem. And once we get the information, then the TAC certainly needs to be involved in any decisions that might be required because of it. But what we're looking for is simply, I think, an analysis of what was built into the cost that we charge Pine River. So I think we all want the same thing, but to me, that's an issue for the staff to look into.
I think you're right, Mary, and Jesse, correct me if I'm wrong, it's not just Pine River, I think you're planning to look at Brainerd, you're gonna look at Baxter, you're gonna look at the county as a whole, you're gonna look at the different riderships, the amounts going out, amounts coming in, and kind of give us a big picture in detail of what we need to look at for doing fair-wise or otherwise, correct?
Right.
You're 100% correct. That's exactly what our approach is going to be, is
That
we need
makes
to
more
do it
sense.
route by route basis to figure out what the expenditures are, because as, like you mentioned, you've been around for a long time. You all understand very well that our fares have not increased in many, many years. However, our expenses and our costs of doing business have. So we just need to ensure that what we are charging for those routes is commensurate with what we're having to pay to maintain and operate those routes, because we're not paying the same for fuel today as we were 5-10 years ago.
Correct. Jan?
I just, do I have my on? Just a comment. I think it would probably be better communication if we kind of took the levy off and looked more at fare increases. As you said, Jesse, that we haven't had a fare increase and we're still pretty reasonable priced, but levy increases are gonna shut the door pretty quick when you start mentioning.
Tough subject.
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah, and I think.
That's the, okay.
No, I was just gonna say, Jesse, I think what you're saying is you get your analysis/report back to us, and then we have a follow-up TAC meeting, whether that be this next quarter, maybe, but certainly by June, I guess.
Yes, our plan was to have everything ready for you the next quarterly meeting, I think
So March, April.
April, I
March or April.
believe. Somewhere in there, spring, early spring.
Mr. Chair, I had a couple of questions on the
Yep,
budget.
go ahead, Mary.
Whenever you're ready.
I'm ready.
Ready? Okay. I just want to be sure that I'm following this and understanding it correctly. Are we under available balance toward the bottom of the page on page, well, it must be page one of two. Are we at 43,753.93 deficit? And that's
Are
under
you looking at the
available
revenue and
balance.
expenditure?
I'm looking under services. It's the services category under revenue and expenditure report. And if you look at the part that is identified as available balance under the category services. We look,
Gotcha. Now I'm with you here. Yep.
we are $43,000 deficit, is that correct?
Correct. So we've spent more than we budgeted by
And
43,000
under
and
the
change.
budget used, we have used 103% of that budget, 103.65.
Yes, so
So we don't
What
have
is-
any of that budget left. So what are we taking from in order to pay our bills?
the reserves account, and that, I think that was kind of what was indicated back in November. Is that,
So if you're going
we
to
would
do
fund through
that,
this reserves
will our
account.
next information that comes to us show that? We get all of this on emails, and frankly, it prints so small, I have a hard time reading it, even with my glasses on. But I'm not certain that we had that information. But we have a responsibility here to not just pie in the sky and it's going to be great next time. We have a very serious problem of deficit here. And
Yes, ma'am.
the sooner we address it, the better. Now, we were advised by the council, we were asked by the council to come up with a plan to address the deficit. So far, we haven't done that. And so I want to be realistic about that. As far as a fare increase, I think we should take that up today. Now, we can't pass it, but we can take it up because it wasn't an agenda item, so we can't pass anything, but we could address it and put it on for another time. And I'm not sure we should wait for the next quarter. I mean, we're in serious problems here. If my bank account looked like this, I wouldn't be waiting till the next quarter to do something. And I think we better take a look at this. Now, just to be clear, whoever's in charge of the bookkeeping, the transit fund, the last one at the bottom of the page in transit fund is at $1,650,709 in the red. It shows it in parentheses. Is that what it means?
No, yeah, so the
Well, what does it mean?
expenditure, the expenditures is 77,000 and change over budget.
Okay, and that would, I'm guessing, be the difference between the 1.6 million, the 223.
The 220, I would ignore the
Okay.
223 number because that was
Oh,
just
okay,
December.
sure.
So
Sure.
that's the difference between the budgeted number and the actual number for
Okay,
the end of the year.
okay.
And just to
Yep.
clarify, Jesse, on that following spreadsheet there, the total reserves at this time are 203,670.
That is correct. And so
Okay.
to Mary's point, we really can't afford to have another year like 2022. So this is why we do want to make this analysis and make the right moves quickly. So we want to do this analysis so we have this available for the next TAC meeting. But as part of that meeting, once we have this completed and we have a set of recommendations, we're also going to include in there a recommended implementation timeline.
And we
For
could,
sake of argument, let's take Pine River again and let's say, the recommendation is to increase Pine River to $4 a ride. Let's just take
How
that.
quickly can you do that? I don't think we should wait another quarter. I know everybody's busy, but I'd like to suggest that we schedule a meeting at least March, no later than March, and get on with this. I think we should look at a fare increase and have that. You look at what you're paying for gas. A fare increase is certainly, I think, a reasonable expectation.
In committee, I want to clarify.
go ahead, Jan.
We agree considerably that most likely a fare increase is what's necessary. We just don't know what's appropriate. We don't know if that's a 25% increase, a 50%, 100%, is that double? We don't know that number and we really can't figure that out until we do the appropriate figures of how much do we need to charge. So if we, let's say we did it tomorrow, we'd be just throwing a dart at the dartboard. We really don't know how much we need to do to address the issue.
Well, Mr. Chair, we may not be able to charge what we ought to charge to make up the revenue that's lost. We may not. So I think we will have to use, it's a kind of a judgment call on how much we can increase it. I'm not suggesting we'll be able to make up the shortfall with it, but it'll be a start.
Thanks, Mary. Go ahead, Jen.
Mr. Chair, I asked last time about the route match. Is the route match able to help us with a preliminary analysis that could help us with that decision? And then go into it further? Because I agree with Mary, I think we're going to need to get on this sooner because it takes, what, 2 months to get it, isn't it 2 months to get it in place again? Or something like that to.
I do remember there's a certain amount of notice, but I don't remember that
Yeah,
time
there's-
frame.
Yeah, but can Route Match give us a preliminary analysis that you guys are want to do in depth, and then still do your in-depth?
Complete waste of time, Jan.
So
Well, they
Route
have-
Match does have some reports that we can pull. However, Route Match does not necessarily have expenditure splits based on our agreements. So there's some things that we can pull from Route Match, but there is other stuff that we need to pull together and compile. And I do want to assure the committee that it is going to be a priority of staff to figure these numbers out soon. You have to understand that we have other issues on a daily basis that we have to resolve, but we are going to prioritize analyzing these routes and talk to partners because we do know that we need to make changes sooner and not later. So we do want to do that quickly, but it does take a little bit of time to put those all together.
Yep, and I agree, and I guess my opinion on the matter would be that we set that on the agenda for next time to be able to vote on fair stuff, but I don't know that I'm ready to have a discussion on it today without looking at some analysis. I know we're going backwards, but again, kind of like you referenced, throwing darts in the dark is, I don't know if that's gonna get us where we're gonna be, and it's just gonna create more work for everyone kind of going through the process.
Mr.
Go ahead,
Chair,
Jan.
excuse me, Jesse, go ahead.
I just wanted to clarify the 30-day notice. I don't think there's anything that says specifically that we have to formally do a 30-day notice.
think
But
you
what
do.
MnDOT has generally said is even like removing routes, that they strongly recommend it. And it is good practice to make sure that people are aware if we're making changes, that notice is given out. So while there's nothing that mandates that 30-day notice, it is something that we would most likely do is put that 30-day notice out for anybody before we make any changes. So after that next TAC meeting, assuming we make a handful of changes, we'll have it in our mind that we will need to put out some public notice for at least 30 days. And then again, part of that recommendation will be an implementation timeline. If some of those changes are done immediately, and then do we have more steps throughout the summer and fall? Or do we change everything in 2024, January 1st? Those are things, once we've done that analysis, all right, what do we think that we need to do to address this? We'll put that all together in a good package.
Yep, go ahead, Jeff.
When we work with the 3 other entities, Pine River, Crow Wing County, and Baxter, they have to decide what their fare increase is gonna be. Now, of course, they're gonna want probably the same numbers you're talking about analyzing and giving back to us. I think for us, we have to do a public hearing if we're raising rates, perhaps a certain amount, but I'm not totally sure about
Be
that.
waiting and waiting on this.
Mr. Chair?
Yeah.
I'm sorry, Jeff, go ahead, finish, I'm sorry.
Anyway, I just would encourage us to, I kind of in the same camp as Mary is and Jan, that Brainerd is gonna have to raise its rates. I don't see how we avoid that. But just talking strictly for Brainerd, I'm not gonna tell Crow Wing County, I can recommend perhaps what they might wanna raise it, as I'm sure you and Crystal would gladly do. But I think for Brainerd, having a $1.25 fare within its city limits, and it's an advance call, and that's very, extremely reasonable with today's fuel prices and everything else, and, so if we're gonna do a fair increase, which, I mean, I can't speak for anybody else here, but I'm fully prepared to. Oh, I hate that. It seems like we're gonna have to do this. I don't know if we wait, if we kick the can down the road. The revenues, the sooner we collect them, the better off we are, the way I look at this. We're not in good shape. We knew this last year. There's really not a lot of other options. Increasing ridership, there is an expense to that, but it's also revenue building, and we need to look at both of those. I saw our marketing budget had virtually nothing spent out of it for last year, even though it wasn't a lot to begin with. So I mean, we have to do something, and I appreciate your effort in going through and analyzing where we need to make, there aren't routes in the city of Brainerd.
Ridiculous.
So we have to look at that. You don't have routes in the city of Brainerd. You have areas you cover. I don't know, it's called a route, but I mean, you see the need, and so you schedule those buses to pick up where they're needed. The county has more of your route, with the Crosby and the Pequot and all that, but, so anyway, I just want to make sure when using these terms about routes, we don't have routes in the city of Brainerd. It's a dollar ride, call in, they schedule buses according to where the need is. Hopefully, if they get them in advance, it works better. So, again, we have a wonderful price for a bus to go from here to, or from here down to Wendy's, or from here to the coffee shop out in the west, or the East Mall. And so to sit here and think that we can continue that regardless of whatever analyzing you might do, it's just not, I don't see it's feasible for the city of Brainerd. And of course, I don't know how it's going to be possible for Baxter. They have to tell their city people what they're going to charge. So that's not up to us as a committee, if I'm not mistaken.
Which I think
So
speaks
that-
to why
that
we
is-
need some of those numbers. Go ahead, Jesse.
Yep, so that was, again, back to what the memo states is what our process is. After this analysis is done, we want to talk to those partners and say, here's how much that route costs us, and here's how much you should charge to make up that difference. And we will leave that up to them to really give us their recommendation of, do they want to increase their route fare to cover that, or if they want to levy for that amount. We're gonna leave that up to them to give them their recommendation and bring that back to TAC.
Right.
And Jeff, to your point on routes within Brainerd, you're correct. There are no routes, but we have to start somewhere. So it's going to be kind of figuring out an average. What's the average trip in Brainerd, and how much does that cost us? And there's a limited amount of ways that we can analyze that. So we have to do some sort of way to make that comparison and figure out how much is this service costing.
And I agree. Unfortunately, I think next meeting we're gonna have to talk about raising rates, but it's kind of a double-edged sword. I mean, you raise rates, you potentially lose ridership or people who would want to ride because, again, that's the cost just like everything else, and everyone's scraping by. So, Jan?
Sure. I agree, but I do not believe we should have a meeting in March. I think the meeting should be moved up sooner than that. I also think, and I know past history is past history, but if I recall correctly, the other entities really didn't do anything until Brainerd made the decision of rate fare increases. Last time I believe they did it, we started, then they kind of tagged on to us. So, I think it would behoove us to at least sit down and have a meeting even next month and just really talk about what we think on the fare increases. We all know we need to do that within the city of Brainerd, and that's our responsibility.
Jesse, I guess maybe a question to you. I know this all takes time. There's a zillion other things going on. Would it be possible to break this down into the different kind of sectors, and, we could review, Baxter and Brainerd next meeting, and we could review Crosby, Pine River, and the month after that? I mean, I don't know that it's realistic to think you and Crystal are gonna have this done in a month to review.
I'm not asking that.
You would,
I'm
It would be
one
very
second,
difficult
Jesse.
for us to have those numbers ready.
Maybe I
But we can
misunderstood
try and have
Jan's
at least-
question.
Mr. Chair, that's not what I'm asking. I'm asking to review Brainerd, that's who we are responsible for. Let's look, we can, if we deem that if a fair increase would be best in our interest for our transit within the city, then let's move on that. And then we can have the analysis, because that's what you're going to have to present to the partners.
I'm going to move that we meet the last Thursday in February at 3 o'clock for the purpose of discussing a fair increase, that we consider, other considerations are certainly welcome, but get something on the record that we consider an increase in Brainerd of $1, which would bring the fare to $2.50, I believe. And that be the specific item of discussion on our agenda. I mean, we're just talking. Let's get something done.
So let me clarify your motion, if I may, Mary. Make sure I get it right here. You're saying meet last Thursday of February, review Brainerd's transits, and review a dollar fare increase. I feel like I missed one thing in there.
Exactly. And Mr. Chair, just to add to that, we can't dictate to the other communities what they do. Based on some discussions I have had with various people, my belief, and may be wrong, but is that the county is likely to not raise fares, but to eliminate routes. And I don't know how that will affect us financially or affect them financially. But it is something that we also could consider. Now, we don't have fixed routes, I know that. But maybe we're going to have to look at reducing by an hour. I'm not suggesting we have any pleasant options, but neither is it pleasant for the taxpayer to have to cough up money for an irresponsible contract.
Go ahead, Jen.
Mr. Chair, Mary did mention that she said it.
Made a motion.
No, I know, but he didn't, you also mentioned to increase it by $1, and I don't think you put that in there.
I might have mentioned that. I think I covered that. I mentioned three things: review Brainerd's ridership and expenditures
Once.
not next Thursday, the last Thursday in February,
And
and
then
then the dollar increase in fares.
Up to $2.50. So I can second that.
Got a second by Jan. Any further discussion?
Yeah, the current
ahead,
fare,
Jeff.
the current fare is $1.25, so that would raise it to $2.
25, that's it.
Mr. Chair.
Go ahead, Doug. Hold on one second here. Go ahead, Doug.
For Jesse and Crystal, wouldn't it be better to put the increases out system-wide, because we are responsible for the entire system, not just Brainerd? And if you just do a price increase on Brainerd, and then down the road you decide to do one on the other, isn't it better to do them all at once as a system?
We can't do it on the others. They're responsible for their own fares.
Yeah, I think each city and area has to decide if they want to increase the fare or just pay out of county or city dollars. Is that correct, Jesse or Crystal?
It is up to them, which is what Jesse was proposing with the end of his memo, that potential route service change options. We would meet with each of our partners and give them our suggestions. One being, you possibly raise fares to this rate, which is what we found in our analysis is gonna be the best for them. Or two, they cut service, or three, a little bit of both. So that is the plan, but we have to meet with them to give them those options, which in the past, Mr. Stone, just a few years ago, I believe, did go to Baxter and proposed $2.50, and Baxter met, and over a period of time, because their council meets the same as ours every 2 weeks and things like that, but they did decide on $2.25 instead of the $2.50, and they didn't decide to continue to increase. the motion for the meeting, I just did want to share with the committee that I will not be in the office on that date. So maybe if we could take a look at a little bit later date. I would request a little bit further time as well to continue with the analysis.
Are you going to be gone all that week?
I will be gone that entire week,
How
yes.
about the week before?
The week before, I leave in the middle of the week. I leave that Thursday the week before.
I would propose March 2nd then.
Yes. But
But
If I can speak to the motion, I'm not against the idea of meeting, so I just would want to make sure, I know it wasn't going to be my question, is can staff have our, just for the city of Brainerd, like I was discussing before the motion, and look at what we can do for just the city riders? And then, of course, my concern is would staff be able to have the information ready for us to throw out the date last Thursday of February? I'm not opposed to that date, but is that something we can we manage to get that done if we did go with that date? Obviously, Crystal isn't gonna be here, so I'm not against a motion. However, if we can't have our transit coordinator there, I would vote against it for that reason. And then I don't know how that will work with perhaps Connie
March 2nd's fine.
and Jesse as well, so.
Go ahead, Jan.
It is a-
I just-
it is a sh- go ahead.
1 second, Jess. Jesse,
Just
sorry.
to answer Doug, to reiterate for Doug, we only can do the fare increase for us. We cannot do it for any of the other entities. Otherwise, yes, it would be great if we could do a system-wide, but we cannot. So that is why I thought if we could be the leader on this, so.
And March 2nd is fine.
Okay.
And seconder agrees.
Jesse, did you have further info you'd like to add?
So two quick things, Nathan, just to kind of connect back on your piece. That would be part of that analysis is what would be a reasonable expectation of a drop in ridership based on increased fares. It's just because you increase fares by three times, that doesn't mean you're going to continue to maintain your ridership. You might see a dip. So we have to figure out that into that analysis, as well as what could we reasonably expect to lose in ridership if we do a fare increase. So that would be part of that calculation as well. March 2nd is a short time frame. We'll do our best to try and have at least Brainerd completed by that time. But I can't make a guarantee by any means that it would be 100% done for Brainerd.
I think if we can focus on Brainerd for that March 2nd meeting and we can circle back around to some of those other ones, and having those individual meetings with those entities, I think if I'm feeling the committee here, that's kind of what we're all thinking.
Yes, Mr. Chair, I understand where Jesse's coming from. I really do, Jesse, and you put a lot of thought in it. But we need to get a handle on this and our rate increase. Oh, I'm sorry. Thank you, Jesse, for this, but we need to get a handle on this soon. And in the past, if we go past fare increases in July, it really doesn't do us much good. So that's why it would be nice if we could start with fare increases earlier than that, and that's really why I'm kind of pushing it.
No, we have, the committee can make a fare increase at any time. I'm just saying that we may not have that analysis 100% completed for Brainerd at that time. We'll do our best to try and have it done, but I can't make a guarantee that it would be. But we can make that fare increase at any time.
Thank you, Jesse. All right, we have a first and a second motion out on the table. March 2nd, again, for fare raise in discussion for Brainerd. All in favor?
Aye.
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 All opposed? Ayes have it.
Mr. Chair, I'm going to head back to the conference, but I do appreciate everybody allowing me to jump on virtually again. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Jesse, for
I'll
your work.
leave it to Crystal kind of cover the rest.
Perfect.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you. Have a good day, guys.
Anything else left to be discussed in financial reports? Think so. Moving on to number 7, new business. And looks like we have discussed with Jefferson Lines and MnDOT system efficiencies. Who's covering that?
Mr. Chair, today and committee members, today in the audience, we have Tori Hunkus, which is our transit project manager with MnDOT, and we also have Kevin Percy, director with Jefferson Lines and Blue Sky Transit, our third-party contractor. At the last committee meeting in November, it was the committee's request that both parties, Tori and Kevin, attend this meeting so the committee could have further discussion with them on their ideas and opinions on better making our transit system more efficient, more analyzing, and this is where we start. So they are here to assist and answer any questions, Tori or Kevin, whomever, or does Mr. Chair, I don't know if you want to have the committee ask them questions. I'm not sure. It's up to you guys.
I guess I would start or open it up just by seeing if there's anything in particular you want to present or share, and then maybe we go into some questions. And I guess if not, then I'll just open it up for questions. Sure, come on up.
I wanted to highlight something that Jesse mentioned earlier. We did have at Jefferson a 10% increase back in our second quarter. We have not seen a ridership dip based on that increase. So I know that was something that was brought up. That doesn't mean it doesn't happen, but given the nature of people's needs, they need to have transit, they need to use the service that we have. So we did increase at 10% the second quarter, and we have still seen an increase in ridership. So just take that for what it is. You know, as Jesse mentioned, inflation, supply chain issues are pretty bad throughout our system. Jefferson Lines runs in 14 states, so we use a lot of outside services based on that, and it is very challenging. And we also would have missed our budget based on the fact that both fuel and outside services would have been impossible to anticipate back in 21 what we dealt with in 22. So there's no magic in the fact that there's no way to have budgeted an increase the way we see. And if anything, it continues to be a problem where vehicles are sitting at facilities which aren't even being looked at and not even being diagnosed. So it is a challenge that is throughout the whole transit system. We are trying to leverage where we can with our manufacturers, getting them involved, bus companies that we work with, asking them to help us at these facilities to see if they can do something to facilitate a quicker review of these vehicles. So the vehicles are continuing to be a problem. We're using our leverage where we can with manufacturers to get them to help us at some of these outside facilities. So, you know, one thing we've had to do at Jefferson is increase our fleet size by probably over 15% to help deal with the fact that we are not getting our vehicles back as fast to allow us to continue our services. Even with that, based on labor shortage of drivers and vehicle shortage, we are probably running another 20% less miles this year than we budgeted, which again affects the overall revenue of the business. So we are dealing with it in many areas.
Mr. Chair, excuse me, are you
Yep.
talking about ours, or are you talking about yours?
Jefferson as a company, Jefferson
Okay.
Lines, to give you an
Okay.
example of what's going on
Okay.
and why some of
Okay.
these issues are happening.
I just want to make sure that
Yep,
we're.
yep. So with Blue Sky, we are looking at the opportunity to potentially bring in a part-time mechanic to work in the evenings and weekends to try to facilitate things faster for us. We have tried as much as we can with our outside partners to get vehicles to us back faster, and we're just not seeing it. So we are going to look at the opportunity to see what we can do maintenance-wise at the facility at Northern Pacific. So just ways that we can try to shorten up the issues we're seeing at Blue Sky. And I think that's all. I just wanted to share some things. I'll answer any questions that you might have today.
Going to start this way, or? In November, am I on? Okay. In November, we had some concerns about and maybe I shouldn't be talking about this, but we had some concerns about availability for some personnel. Is that something that can be addressed, or is that something that has been addressed? I believe basically our coordinator, or not our coordinator, the manager, is it the manager?
Yep.
Has
Our
that-
Blue Sky manager? Yeah.
The one for
Yes.
us, has that been addressed?
Addressed in the sense we have one.
I know, but has it
Oh.
been addressed the fact that we've had difficulty with communications or availability?
We have been addressing it. We are continuing to address it. We're trying to provide that person with more coaching, and we'll probably be doing some management training to help that person to understand how to be better at what they need to do.
Okay.
The individual is young, has not had a lot of experience with some of the management. She has a very strong safety background. She has a CDL, which allows her to get into buses and to bring buses to facilities. So she has a lot of qualities that are hard to come by. But at the same token, yes, we are aware that we need to work with her to better coordinate and communicate to the staff.
Staff and.
Yes.
I guess that was the biggest thing I came away on Thursday, is the fact that, in November, was the fact that we had some internal problems with staff. And I think that's important. But I guess the other thing, and Crystal probably knows this already, if there's a chain of command that we can go to if we have problems on this end, and then there is a chain of command. Okay, that's
It's
you?
me. Yep.
Excuse me, I didn't mean to point
Yep,
at you.
and I actually plan on being up here more often.
Oh,
I've
okay.
already started that, and will continue to be up here more often until these issues are fixed.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And they will be fixed one way or the other. I mean,
Okay.
but we want to give that individual the opportunity.
right.
And so it's important to us to take care of these things.
Okay.
But to give them
Appreciate
all the
that.
tools and opportunity to be successful.
I don't think you have any control over the fact we're not getting new buses or, you have no control over that, and I understand that.
Right.
So I think we have to make up for it in how our personnel and our
And we
people's-
do. We realize the problems are not going to go away.
Okay, thank
And
you.
so we have to solve them.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Other questions from the committee?
Yeah, I have
Go
one.
ahead, Jeff.
I want to thank you for meeting with me briefly before the meeting, and I did have some issues that I did raise with him that probably best that they be spoken of at that time, but when it comes to, Jan mentioned chain of command, do the employees of Blue Sky, being dispatchers, the manager, and whomever, do they know that Crystal is our transit coordinator, is the go-to person, the one that makes decisions regarding if there's going to be a bus canceled, or is there going to be a change in whatever service is expected that day by the public? Are they fully aware of that?
That's a good question. I don't know if they do. I know they know Crystal very well. They know who she is. I don't know if they know she decides on what is available or what isn't available. I think it's a situation where we want to make sure that they don't turn Crystal into a go-to person and that she's all of a sudden getting inundated with issues that really they should be coming to us with. So I do want to make sure that there's a clear line that, they go to Jenna as their boss, she's their boss, and Crystal is the client and the person we should be giving communication properly through the right channels.
Okay.
So,
So I guess my concern is, if there's a time when, the only person that cancels this bus service is somebody here at the city, or if they change anything to do with what buses are being used on what given day, and if there's an accident and there's damage, they are supposed to notify our transit coordinator. Everybody,
Correct.
okay, everybody knows that.
But I'm understanding that just one of the things you did mention in your comment about buses, my understanding, we're in charge of using whatever buses are available to run the routes. Crystal does not tell us each day, use these buses on these routes. It's my understanding.
That's not what I asked. I asked about the service being provided that day, if there's going to be a.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
But if there's gonna be something canceled or change, as
Yes.
far as each bus, I can see that not being in Crystal's wheelhouse.
Right,
That's-
correct.
Okay.
Yes,
fair
but
enough.
yes, she is
Fair
the one who dictates that.
enough. Okay. Thank you.
Okay?
Just one quick question as far, maybe Jefferson Lines as a whole? I mean, staffing shortages are everywhere. How is that being seen in the busing world, I guess?
Well, knock on wood, honestly, driver-wise, we have been able to keep our staff here, which has been very good. I would tell you the turnover rate for CDL drivers is extremely high. And it's quite challenging, and we're in complete competition, whether it's the Walmarts of trucking or the Metro Transits. But we even see the challenges even at the basic employee level. So we're constantly trying to come up with incentive plans, programs to compete in the marketplace.
Nice.
So,
Thank you. Any further questions for Kevin? I do not believe
Thank
so.
you
Thank you.
very much.
Yep.
I don't know. Do we have any specific questions for MnDOT representative?
I do.
Oh, Jan does, so yes. Come on
I'll be
up.
real quick. I'll be real quick. And hi, thanks for coming in. And I know Crystal, I've talked with Crystal on this, and how close or how involved is the state about looking at getting vans in, utilizing vans? I really think that's something that we really should look to. And so I'll just leave that at that.
Very involved. They're not part of the state bid contract, right? So the state bid right now only has buses on it, where we do all the procurement and handle the, like, approving the ordering and all of that stuff. But we do have a committee of folks in my office, I'm not on it, looking into the possibility of folding vans as options into the state contract. Because right now, vans are possible, but they're really tricky to procure.
Okay.
And there's no state funding for it. It would have to come from local monies or reserve accounts or some other funding source like that.
Is there anything we can do on our part to say how important it is?
I think the issue has been very clearly communicated to us by a range of different systems all across the state. For almost a year now, it's been pretty loud. And I apologize, I don't have any more specifics on
I don't.
updates, but I do know that it's being worked on.
You see, have any deadline? We're gonna look in 5 years. You think we might know by the end of this year?
Maybe the end of this year.
Ooh, okay, I'm happy now.
Well, good deal. Any other questions for Tori?
I have one of,
Go ahead, Jeff.
thank you for joining us. I appreciate it. When we're switching from diesel to regular gasoline vehicles, and that's a state mandated thing, if I'm not mistaken. Is that correct?
No, it's not mandated. Diesel vehicles are still available on the state bid. I think it's encouraged to move towards lower emissions vehicles, but that's also, there's separate programs to do with that too, like low and no emission grants that MnDOT is applying for, and looking for transit partners who are interested in converting diesel buses, if you still have them, to gas, or procuring electric vehicles or propane or any other thing that's lower emissions.
The reason I ask, back when the county came on board with the city of Brainerd to be a rural county transit system, it was encouraged, or essentially there were no options. We had to get diesel. And now 2 decades later, we're trying to stop. It just seems like it just seems odd. I don't know what issues have been raised throughout the diesel over the years and the different things they've done to them, and I think there's been a lot of issues with maintenance, and I don't know how that affects the state when it comes to funding and helping out the local projects like we have here to cover the extra costs. But so I mean, I didn't expect you to have like an answer to say why is this happening, but it just seems odd. I was just making a comment more than anything, so.
Okay, sorry, I don't have more
Okay.
info.
Fair enough. Just, anyway.
Any further questions for Tori? Thank you, Tori. All right. Moving to public forum. Not seeing anyone in the room. Do we have anyone online? Nope. All right. Moving on to staff reports. Assuming that's you, Crystal?
That's me. This, just recently, I guess we're still in January, so this year, this year, I did partake in my initial meetings For Brainerd Public Transit is going to receive a comprehensive review. And I may utilize Tori's knowledge on what that consists of. But by comprehensive, they're reviewing from A to Z of our agency and our system. And it's actually perfect timing for, we need it. So I'm very excited to do it. It's gonna be a lot of work. It's gonna be the whole year of looking into everything. But we need it, and it's time to definitely turn over everything and look it over and make sure we're doing things properly and efficiently. And with that, there's also the opportunity that I requested and was chosen to receive. I met with a consultant by, I think the company is pronounced ACOM. It's a consulting service. MnDOT is providing it to us. And I requested further assistance and consultation on our route and service analysis, business planning, and service performance evaluation were the three things that I chose as our highest priorities for the next 3 to 5 years. So that'll keep me very busy, but I will continue to update the committee with the information that's found during the reviews and during the consulting services if they propose any changes, and maybe the consulting service, maybe they'll attend a TAC meeting as well with some proposals on changes and things that they might see that we need in the future.
One question for you, Crystal, on that. Did they give any tentative timeframes for completion, like whatever, 2024 or whenever?
So for the comprehensive review that will happen this year, I gave them my suggested, they asked me to give them a suggested 3 months. And so I requested fall time period, because I knew that we were gonna be busy with the analysis already, what we're talking about here earlier, and then also with the consultation work, and then fall would just be a good time to partake in that. They'll actually come on site, so there'll be a lot of meeting with them. As for the consultation, I know that's a 3-year contract, so I'm not sure. We just had the initial discovery meeting like maybe 2 weeks ago, so this month. So just a couple weeks ago, we had the discovery meeting. I requested the assistance, and they're gonna look it all over, look at our system further, work with MnDOT further, and then determine when our next meeting will be and when we start the process. That will hopefully be this year, though, as well, starting all that.
Very good, thank you.
Yes.
Any other?
Mr. Chair, I wanted to thank Crystal for the information she sent out after the last meeting. I really appreciated it, and it was very, very helpful. So thank you.
You're very welcome, Ms.
And I
Swope.
noted that our rides were costing $30 apiece.
Yes, $30.
That was
and-
not happy
yes.
information, but it was expected.
Thank you, Marion, thank you, Crystal. Anything further, Crystal?
Nothing further, Mr. Chair.
All right. Any other committee member comments or questions? Number 10. Oh, go ahead, Doug.
I have I'm gonna step back a bit, and I don't know if this is directed towards Blue Sky or policies with you, Crystal, but I was looking over the operating statistics. Guests, do they pay or do they not pay? I know aides don't pay, but do
Correct.
guests pay?
Guests do pay.
Okay.
Attendants do not pay.
Okay. The no-show policy. I noticed last year that 2,474 no-shows equated to 215,000 service miles. That's a lot of fuel for people we're not picking up. So are we addressing the no-show policy? Is it being enforced? Are
Yes,
we-
yes, I have addressed the no-show policy, and the contractor is working on enforcing it.
Okay. That adds up to a lot of money.
Yes, it does.
Oh. Okay, that's all I have.
Thanks, Doug. Go ahead,
Thank you.
Jen.
2 questions here. So aren't we also involved in the enforcement?
Yes, as soon as I said that, I realized I should have said, we are both working on,
Okay.
together, myself and the contractor are working on enforcing it.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
I just have a request. This page is very hard to read online. Do we have to have our logo on the body of the letter?
That will be changing. It's, yes, that was a first and a last, I would say.
Yes.
It looks nice, though.
Not unless you're reading, not when
Right,
you're reading
right.
it.
It's
but-
nice unless you're reading it.
Unless,
Yes,
yeah,
thank you.
from
That's-
afar, looks
Nope.
great.
Okay, thank you. That's all I have.
Thank you, Jan.
May I?
You may. Go ahead, Jeff.
On December 5th, I was going to the airport, and I got on the bus, and there was somebody on there already. Very nice young lady. She said hello to me, and I started chatting with her, and it turned out that her car was not starting that morning, and she lived up by the Memorial Park area. And she called. She didn't know what else to do. She called the bus, and they were able to pick her up because I believe the bus was in the neighborhood to get me. She was taking her little boy out to the grade school in Baxter. He was a kindergartner, and she had never ridden before. And so I thought that was a really good example of how good our bus system can work. And of course, that was something she never expected, and the little guy was having her be the interpreter to tell me what kind of toys he plays with. It was kind of cute, but but it was just an example of how good the bus service can be for people who may otherwise don't drive. The car breaks down. I know a lot of people over the years who just because of age sometimes give up driving, and they have an opportunity then to get across town or do shopping and that type of thing. So there are some positive stories. I had spoke with our gentleman from Blue Sky before the meeting, as I mentioned. I aired some concerns, and I do believe he's doing his best to work on the issues that are coming before our transit department and within the Blue Sky realm of dispatching and providing drivers and getting buses out there. So I'm encouraged, and I saw our ridership was up by 22% from 2021, which is a huge increase, and perhaps we can look for the same thing in 2023 and maybe help us get out of the financial difficulties to a certain extent. It won't cover everything, but it'll help. So that's all I have.
Agreed. Thanks, Jeff. And I think it's always good to highlight a small success story in there, and that's good to have some new writers.
Yeah.
So, anything further from committee members? If not, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed?
Thank you
All
very
right,
much.
meeting closes at 4:28.